And so to me, I think that is one positive aspect of this. And I think our allies are open to listening to the president make a strong case, if he can, about the possibility of potentially going to their elected bodies and saying, hey, let's help our long-term friends, the United States, with this issue.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that Trump is learning more about the importance of our institutions?
I think that's very evident.
Because he seems to be suggesting that this is evidence that he doesn't need to respect NATO anymore, that NATO is irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm not interpreting it that way.
In today's video, Abby Phillip humiliates Shermichael Singleton on NewsNight with Abby Phillip as they clash over Trump's foreign policy and rising Middle East tensions globally and dangerously. Abby Phillip exposes the contradictions of relying on allies after pushing them away, while Shermichael Singleton struggles to defend the administration under mounting political and international pressure. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Shermichael Singleton on NewsNight with Abby Phillip.
This is not our war. We have not started it. It's hard to get more blunt than that, Anna. And the president is also doing this, at least according to recent American history, particularly the lead up to the Iraq War, without doing this in advance. He's trying to cobble together a coalition after the fact. You can say what you will about how the Bush administration handled the Iraq War, but they went to Congress and got an authorization for military force. They went to the allies, put together a coalition of the willing, and then they went in.
As did Bush 1. As you will remember, when in Desert Storm, there was a UN-backed international coalition. Listen, Donald Trump hasn't made the case to the American people. We haven't so much as had an address to the American people about what he is doing in Iran. It's been all over the place. So it's hard to imagine that he has given a coherent explanation or pitch to the allies that, as you point out, he has been crapping on for over a year. You will remember how angry the Brits were earlier in the year when Trump called them a bunch of cowards, and they said, well, wait, we actually died for you all. We sent soldiers that died fighting alongside the United States. So it's no wonder that some of these international allies are looking at Trump and saying, you're on your own, buddy.
Yeah, and he criticized the Brits again today, and they did. I mean, okay, he just said in that clip, they've never come to our aid. They don't come to our aid. They have come to our aid. Yeah. The UK specifically came to our aid and lost almost 800 of their countrymen for us.
Yeah. Look, free Iran is a good cause, but this war right now looks like a very bad strategy. And part of the thing is, the reason that you try to be nice, the reason your parents raised you to be polite and be nice to people is because you never know who you're going to need to be your friend or when you're going to need a friend. He has managed to chase off all the people that used to like the United States. You can't even go anywhere in the world right now without people looking at you sideways just because of him. And now he's, baby, please, baby, please come back. It's like, dude, you blew it. This is not, you cannot go get somebody back when you treat them this badly.
Carrot, stick, I mean, there's not much in the way of carrots these days.
I think he actually is trying to shame Europe. He wants to show the Americans who don't like the way he's handled NATO and don't like the way he's pressed NATO. He's trying to expose the fact that Europe is not a reliable ally. Now, I think they have been a reliable ally. They should be again. They're spending more on NATO than they had before. And of course they should come when the United States president calls them. But I think his best prospects are in Asia. South Korea currently gets 70% of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan gets 40%. We have 50,000 troops in Japan and 35,000 in South Korea. The Japanese prime minister today implied that perhaps they could come and help patrol the strait. I think that's really where our alliance will end up being on this project. And I think Europe's going to look really weak and irrelevant when they do.
It really highlights how risky the current US approach in the Strait of Hormuz looks, beyond what Ana Navarro pointed out about cobbling a coalition after the fact. Historical context matters. Prior administrations, from Bush 41 to Bush 43, sought congressional approval and clear ally coordination before military actions. By contrast, the current strategy leaves the US isolated, and allies like the UK, who have already sacrificed hundreds of troops alongside Americans in past conflicts, are understandably hesitant to jump in now. Countries that once relied on American leadership are now watching cautiously, wondering if support will be consistent or just reactive. The regional stakes add another layer. South Korea, which gets 70% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and Japan, with 40%, both have enormous energy incentives to monitor shipping lanes. With tens of thousands of US troops stationed in both countries, the likelihood of Asian allies stepping in grows, but that leaves Europe on the sidelines, potentially weakening NATO's perceived reliability. Ana Navarro is right to emphasize that alienating long-standing European allies makes it harder to negotiate cooperation, even for issues critical to US national security. The bigger picture is political credibility. When leaders criticize allies publicly, like calling the British cowards, it erodes trust that took decades to build. Navarro's point about carrot and stick diplomacy rings true. Even the best strategy fails if other nations doubt American consistency. The US could still rally support, but the longer this hesitation continues, the harder it becomes to regain lost influence. Navarro's commentary reminds viewers that smart foreign policy requires foresight, respect for allies, and clarity of purpose, not reactive scrambling under pressure.
Will they? I mean, I actually, again, I want to go back also to just the basic premise. After the fact, we've already started the war, the strait is already closed, Iran is already bombing ships in the strait. We are now, after the fact, asking countries to come in and help us. And maybe Japan and maybe South Korea will, but the fact that they are being asked on the back end, and some of them are asking a basic question, how can they are democratic nations, how can they sell this to their people?
Well, look, I do think the president has to talk with our allies about what the long-term strategy here is. I think there is an argument to be made. I discussed this on your show 2 weeks ago about Iran, terror proxy groups, specifically focusing on China. 80% of their oil exports are purchased by China. That's a lot of cash inflowing into the Iranian regime to help terrorism continue. And so I think there's an argument that even our European allies would be open to if the president makes the case. I think the good side here, though, is there's been a lot of criticism about the president and our European friends. And I think the president is beginning to recognize the importance of the systems that the United States, quite frankly, built after World War II, the economic systems, the military systems. And so to me, I think that is one positive aspect of this. And I think our allies are open to listening to the president make a strong case, if he can, about the possibility of potentially going to their elected bodies and saying, hey, let's help our long-term friends, the United States, with this issue.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that Trump is learning more about the importance of our institutions?
I think that's very evident.
Because he seems to be suggesting that this is evidence that he doesn't need to respect NATO anymore, that NATO is irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm not interpreting it that way. I think the reason he's coming to the conclusion that you want our British friends involved, you want our German friends involved. I think he said he spoke with Macron. He'll see what Macron has to say about this. To me, that's a recognition that when you have international conflicts such as this, you want to have your allies engaged with you. And I think that's a positive aspect of learning for the president.
I mean,
you got a funny way of showing it.
Yeah, well, listen, Trump has always thought that he could fix things alone. He has said in his convention speech, I alone can fix it. This is how he goes about things. He believes he doesn't need help from anyone else. He wants the credit. But now he is realizing, and I think he's realizing only because of political pressure, only because gas prices are going up, only because he's finally getting some heat from the Republican Party and Americans as a whole, that he actually needs help getting out of this conflict. He doesn't know how to get out of this conflict. And if he actually cared about our allies, he wouldn't have gone after Greenland. He wouldn't have said that our allies were not in the front lines in Afghanistan. He wouldn't have gone on True Social to kind of disparage any ally on any given day. And he would have actually consulted with them at the start of this versus at the end. And Abby brings up a very good point. It's after the fact. And even then, it is very hard for him. It's not who he is to ask for help. It is an ego thing at this point. And even his back and forth and his rhetoric around this is very interesting. He understands in order to get out of this, he needs our allies. They're not willing to help him because this is not their war.
Well, we
this
don't
is
know.
a war that
Germans
Donald Trump
Historical precedent shows that when the US has acted unilaterally without consulting allies, like in the early stages of Iraq, long-term consequences are often severe. Countries like Germany and the UK are hesitant to commit troops or resources now because they were blindsided, and their publics demand transparency. Navarro and other analysts have noted that when democratic allies feel sidelined, it reduces cooperation on intelligence sharing and strategic operations, making any military intervention riskier and less effective. The economic dimension adds another layer to this debate. Iran earns roughly 80% of its oil revenue from China, funding proxy groups and terrorist activity across the region. If the US engages militarily without a coherent strategy that includes diplomatic and economic measures, those revenue streams remain intact, prolonging instability. Abby and Xochitl are right to emphasize that coalition support is not just about boots on the ground. It's about aligning long-term policies, leveraging economic pressure, and ensuring allies can justify participation to their citizens. Without that, any military success could be temporary and unsustainable. Politically, the US risks credibility if it continues to alienate allies while simultaneously demanding their support. Past missteps, Greenland disparaging allies on social media, inconsistent messaging on NATO have eroded trust. As Abby and Xochitl highlight, this isn't just about strategy, it's about respect and foresight. The current situation is a reminder that strong foreign policy requires humility, coordination, and clear communication. Leaders who ignore these principles often find themselves isolated, and the cost, strategic, economic, and human, can be enormous.
Well, let me give you an example. I mean, the Germans are pretty clear. They're saying that the U.S. and Israel need to define when they consider the military aims of their deployment have been reached. We need more clarity here, he told reporters. Estonia's foreign minister said that U.S. allies in Europe want to understand Trump's strategic goals. What will be the plan?
That's a reasonable
eminently
ask.
reasonable
That's reasonable
to ask. And again, Trump, there was one point today where Trump...
I think Americans want to know, too.
Americans want to know, too. At one point today, Trump was relaying a conversation that he had had with I believe it might have been at the UK, where he was told, basically, I'll get back to you. I have to go run this by my advisors, run this by people. And Trump's like, well, you don't have to do that. Well, actually, they do. I mean, these are countries where the United States has not been this unpopular in over a decade, at the very least,
well,
right?
The quotes...
So Trump is asking them to go defend the U.S. at a time when, as Van pointed out, Americans are not very popular, and Trump in particular is deeply unpopular.
Yeah, sure, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you look at the recent history, international history over the past 100 years, the United States have involved and engaged ourselves in many conflicts that we didn't necessarily start. The two quotes that you read, I didn't hear any of those leaders say absolutely not, no, we're not going to engage ourselves. I heard a quest for more details and specificity on what the ultimate aims are. And to me, that's not an unreasonable ask. And if I were advising the president, I would say, let's put together that strategic assessment. You can talk about the past, what we should have, could have done. But let's focus on now and moving forward.
Look, if he had that to give to the Europeans, then he should also give that to the United States, as Anna just said. Look, I mean, part of the problem here is that it's really a tragedy because the Iranian people have been suffering for 47 years. Their hopes got raised now twice that they might get free. When they went out, but we've been ready, fire, aim on one of the most important situations in the world. We pulled these economic levers to crash the economy and then have the protesters come out. That's the protesters come out. We say, stay in the streets, we'll help you. They get murdered.
30,000, I believe.
30,000 people murdered in 2 days. Our armada is on the other side of the world messing with Nicaragua.
It was actually Venezuela.
I'm sorry, with Venezuela.
I wish.
It really backs up a lot of what Van Jones was pushing in the panel. Many of the United States' closest allies in Europe have been very clear that they aren't willing to jump into a broader war without a defined strategy and explicit goals from Washington. Germany, for example, has flat out declined to send military forces, saying the conflict with Iran isn't their war and that there was no prior consultation about it, which makes it hard for them to justify involvement under their own laws and alliances. Beyond Germany, other major NATO members like the UK and France have also rejected Donald Trump's call for warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz, emphasizing that NATO is a defensive alliance and that they won't be drawn into a conflict they weren't consulted on. That sentiment underscores what Van was saying about the necessity of clear communication and coalition building before engaging in a major international crisis, not after. It's far more effective to bring partners on board early with a clearly articulated plan than to scramble for support once the situation has deteriorated. There's also a broader pattern of European caution that ties into this. Many leaders across the EU have stressed the need for clarity on strategic aims and timelines before committing to more direct involvement, and some are exploring diplomatic or defensive alternatives rather than full military engagement. All of this reinforces the idea that solid, transparent planning and respect for alliances matter a lot when a nation seeks support. Exactly the point Van was pushing in the debate with Singleton. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.